And who you are stifles where you're trying to go. One of those two things has to change.
Pay attention. I think you'll find yourself in their stories.
Is there like a perception of overweight or obese people that you can't be both successful and still have the commitment of working on yourself, that in some way that one has to precede the other? Like before you can really truly be successful, you have to first have the image of it first.
It's our big, fat, emotional journeys, and it's costing us far too much.
The same judgment that a lot of people spew on others, I wonder if that same, I don't wonder, I know that same woman on some level seeks to have that validation, or maybe it might not be that exact level, but maybe a similar level for herself.
Yeah.
You know, she wants to be validated, and the only way that she can be validated is based on what she can produce, right? How she looks, how her hair, her car, her house, how her babies look, how her man look. And that's how maybe why a lot of women, we get caught up in appearances. We get caught up in, oh my God, how are you able to do that? How can you? Where it's nothing to do with validation from the outward. It's all about internal validation and validation from source. Validation from source validation.
Yep.
And it's that's where asking how do you want to feel, asking your questions why, and learning to being okay with trusting yourself and what comes up, realizing that validation from any external source, it doesn't matter. I know that's hard to accept, but it really doesn't matter what other people think. It doesn't matter. It does not matter what people think. Now you can have some level of connection or compassion for another person's opinion and how they feel about stuff based on your actions, because what you do affects someone else. But to allow it to consume who you are and your actions and your ability to be who you are and show up and to engage in your process, that right there is enslavement right there. That's enslavement, because you enslaved to someone else's perception, whose perception is flawed by the fact that they even have one.
Right, because they're not you.
Because your eyeballs, right? Here we go, my science talk. Your eyeballs are only really reflecting what the brain processes.
Yep. Not
and
everything that's there.
Yeah, the brain is like, oh, okay, well, this is what I know, so this is what I'm going to tell you that you're seeing.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that that's the only thing that's there.
Yep.
That was good. It doesn't mean that that's the only thing that's there. It's just what you can only see.
Yeah.
So that if you're focusing on what someone else thinks about you, you're shifting your attention to a thought process of someone who is fundamentally flawed, whose perception is flawed by the mere fact that they're humans. So why does it matter if you're overweight, if you're in your process of losing weight on any level? Trust get your process, get truth to your process, trust it, and live it. Be who you are in the midst of shedding your weight.
Yes.
Allow yourself to be trapped because of your weight. Whatever that weight may be, physical, emotional. Get in that space of loving who you are in the midst of that and be who you are.
Yeah.
Your perceptions, the perception God has of you, trumps any eyeballs. You just eyeballs.
Yes, trumping the eyeballs. I like that.
People in general, are they surprised when they see a woman or man who happens to be on the top of her game or his game or doing really well in their space, and they happen to be extremely overweight? What is that? And I know for me as a woman who is working on her body and who prioritizes her body, I've realized and have come into the space of recognition that the weight isn't going to drop off tomorrow. I come to realize the space that in order to lose the weight, for me, it has to be part of my life and not a thing that I do.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be a part of my everyday awareness, and that how I feel every day matters more than how I physically look. Not that how I look doesn't matter, but how I feel is much more important than that. Mm-hmm. So my choices trump that, and so therefore my actions have always trumped that. I'm always going to work towards excellence in my life, work towards excellence in my work, realizing that in all things it's a work in progress. And it frustrates me when I hear people say things like, "You're pretty," to me or to other people, "You're cute for a big girl," or "You're so smart," or "You're articulate." And I can't tell if they're saying it. Why are you pointing out that I'm so articulate? Like I shouldn't be?
Is it weird? Like, right. Yeah.
Like I shouldn't be articulate?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you surprised that I actually have a level of self-respect despite what you may see from me physically? Or if I am at dinner with you or an event and I don't want seconds, are you surprised that I don't want seconds? Mm-hmm. Would you assume that I would want to eat the whole buffet? Mm-hmm. Just kidding. Like, would you assume that I definitely would want seconds? Are you surprised when I say, no, I'm good, I don't want that, or I would prefer to have water over soda, or I actually do have pretty good eating habits compared to most people who are of normal weight. So I guess if there is a question in there is, what is that thing in people?
And I think that's a great question. I think it opens up the space, which is why we're doing this sort of thing. It opens up the space for dialogue, both internal dialogue, each of us speaking to our own selves and addressing our own truths and our own lies. And then also having the public dialogue about perception, because any type of ism, whether it's sexism, racism, speciesism, fatism, any of those things, ageism, those things usually start not with the thing that you're seeing or the person that you're seeing, but the lens through which you're seeing it, right? Like your own filter and oftentimes your own ignorance, right? And so this is why we're doing this, to have this dialogue, because a few things come up, as you were posing the question and all the other things that kind of spawn from that question. I think about our own truths. So, for example, when you say healthy eating habits, what is that? Like, compared to what? Because if you do have healthy eating habits, certain things won't result. So you can either look at that from a space of, okay, maybe then my work is to define what healthy eating habits mean at each stage of my journey, because a healthy eating habit at a certain weight needs to look different, as you lose the weight or as maybe you gain the weight or whatever, but also from the person looking in, thinking they know what your journey is like, for them to turn the mirror around and say, why is it that I feel like I should be so concerned, and even to the point of expressing to that person what I think they should or should not be doing? Like, what is that actually about? So that's why these conversations are important, so that we can educate ourselves and hopefully affect change, because people become educated as they learn directly from the people themselves, and not just your perception of, what that person needs to be doing differently.
Exactly. I wholeheartedly agree. I remember seeing a post from a stylist, and she's a plus size stylist. She's a blogger, and I don't know where her picture was posted, but at any rate, she got some pretty rude comments, and a lot of the comments were about the fact that she was, overweight. She was plus size, and that she was promoting how to be stylish in your body. And regardless of her journey, regardless of, no one, and I actually happen to know that this person has made big strides in prioritizing her health and has lost some weight, and not because of how she looks, but because of how she wants to feel, and she wants her body to feel for her. I happen to know that because you read her blog, she talks about it openly. But in the meantime, she celebrates who she is today. She celebrates her curves today.
Yeah.
In the meantime, in the comments that people left, people felt a need, and I know Jay talks about this too. They felt a need that it was wide open because you can see the pain or the issue, then therefore it's open for you to be able to attack it, for someone else to be able to openly address it. And so people were attacking this woman, saying that, it's not right that we are applauding how she looks, in terms of how she dresses, but look at her body, look at this, look at that, and she needs to lose some weight and blah, 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 blah. But my thing is, because it can be seen, why does it make it easy for people to attack it? And I'm not just talking about weight now. I'm even talking about other things. Like a person's status, marital status, or a person's sexuality, because it's open and display. Why is it easy for people to feel as though they can address it?
Yeah.
Because they can see it. Well, what makes it your business?
I think the answer is in the question, because they can see it, because it's real easy. Again, I make no bones about talking about how, people like Ivy in particular, plug for See Body Love Self, has taught me so much about the journey to embody your body and yourself in all stages of the journey. Like it is one thing to understand intellectually that if you don't love yourself at any stage, then you can't heal yourself at any stage.
Yep.
But what we are groomed to believe is that we have to arrive before we can call ourselves because before we can call ourselves the expert, we have to have 15 certifications, got to have the degree from here, blah, blah, and a partridge and a pear tree. Like you have to have like all of these things before you can call yourself something. But we know from a spiritual space that the calling starts inside of you first, right? The calling starts inside of you first, whatever that thing is. And when you make peace with that thing, that's the only time that you can say, okay, now that I've made peace with the fact that I don't feel good in my body, and that my idea of healthy means that it's in comparison to whatever I was in before, doesn't make it okay. Again, not just talking about weight. Like if you come out of a relationship that was physically abusive and then you go into one that's emotionally abusive and you say, well, this is a healthy relationship because I'm not being physically attacked. Well, no, it isn't. The perspective on what healthy is changed now because you're in a different stage of the journey. But if you are reflecting on who you are and what your needs are, that is the only way. Loving yourself in that body, in that system, in that whatever is the only way that you can shore up the resources that you need spiritually and logistically to say, okay, since I do love me at however many pounds, or in this relationship that I still can't figure out how I ended up in, or in this status of not having money, but at least not working for somebody and hating my job. Since I love me in this space, let's see how I can love on me even more, right? And that's the only way that you can do it. But we're not talking about that. We only want to talk about the ones who've arrived because that looks pretty.
And you know what? Not only does it look pretty, it confirms fears of our own selves.
Yep.
Of others, because I don't have those fears. But it confirms fears in us as a collective whole, as a being, humans. Mm-hmm. It confirms it. So it's like, and it also gives, I think, excuses for whatever isn't showing up in your life for you to continue to make excuses for it. I think, in terms of, and what I mean by that is, we love, and you said this already, we love the examples. We love to see the person that arrived that gives us hope. I think we're so addicted to hope as people. We have an addiction to hope. Not addiction to change, not addiction to truth, not addiction to action, but just the hope of something. We will move on just an idea that is possible.
Yeah.
And we would hold on to that and still not do anything, but because we got that hope, and so when we see all these examples of it, it continues to give us hope. And then when we see other examples of where people clearly you don't have hope, clearly you don't have this addiction I have, or clearly you don't, you haven't arrived, something must be wrong with them, and not wrong with the way you see the world, that through that judgmental eye. And I'm grateful for the ability to see that way, to not judge, but to be very clear on what I'm feeling from people who may have a different perception about how my stuff happens to show up versus how someone else's stuff happens to show up.
Yeah.
Because I look at it as, if anything, I want to be in a space of prayer and kindness and love towards you, because I don't want to be in that space of always seeing something to judge versus being able to see something to love and to embrace and to be compassionate about. Because you can't heal anything that you do not love.
Yeah.
You cannot see, you cannot see a new course and a new direction if you're only seeing things from a judgmental eye. And where that judgmental eye, before it's on someone else, it comes from you. So the moment that you're judging someone else, you've already judged yourself. To even be able to be in that mindset, to instantly think judgment of someone else's journey.
Yeah.
You gotta already be in that space of judging your own journey. I'm not good enough. I don't like this job. I hate my house. I wish I could sell it. I hate this. It's like, I don't really hate my house. I'm just saying. My daughter just looked at me like, really? But you got to be in that space of everything is, or not everything, but there's stuff in your life that you don't like. To be able to say, when you must really hate your life if you look like that. And that may not be the case.
Right.
Like how can something overnight change if you don't give it time to? And how can it? Of course, I mean, and I've done every weight loss thing there is known. And I can say now, at this age, I'm much, much more comfortable with my process. Now, I'm not dropping 20 pounds a week. I wish. Of course I wish. It will leave tomorrow. Absolutely. But I'm pushing myself, but in the same time, I'm listening to myself, and I'm trusting Katrina. I'm trusting how I feel. I'm trusting it and knowing that I'm getting what I need. And I'm recognizing that and making strides every day. This is not a PSA or me trying to say, hey, y'all, I'm okay. But I'm just saying, for those who may be struggling in their process, for some, it's things have to change tomorrow in terms of drastic. Absolutely. But for others, it's not. The drastic change may not show up the same way.
Yeah.
The drastic may be, for some people, going to a clinic, right? For another person, it may be like my daughter did today, throwing out the fake syrup, throwing away all artificial flavors and adopting a whole raw lifestyle or whatever. And that may be your drastic change. But realizing that it still has to has to have time to show up. If the intention, at least for me, and for a lot of folks that I know, who are having any issues or they are committed to whatever change they want to make, it has to be real for them, because they don't want to go back to it. They don't ever want to go back to that imprisonment that they were in.
So let me ask you this. For the woman listening who is going through the need to release weight, and again, we are using physical weight really as almost like a catch-all phrase for all the different types of weight that we carry, because for some of us it isn't physical, but unfortunately where we live, for most of us it is physical, which adds to the emotional, because most of us have the emotional already. So it's a trap on top of another trap. What I want to challenge anybody to consider, and what I'd like for you to address, because I think it will be helpful, is how do you trust yourself? Fortunately, you have those tools. Like you understand your process, and you talk about self-trust and, the process needing to be real to you. But why that doesn't process the same way for me is, how do you trust yourself when it isn't always just yourself? So, for example, with the foods, a big part of even food weight management, in many cases, maybe even most, always starts out with emotional eating. Like, you eat because it has something to do with something else, not the food. You don't have to be a food expert or psychiatrist. That's just regular ass information, right? If you know that, because most of us accept that as true, what is it that you're trusting when you make the decision to say, well, my transition may not be an extreme thing, but I'm going to start here. Starting here is fine. But if you still have addictions from eating things a certain way, is it yourself that you're trusting in your process, or are you just weakened because of the things that are going on in your body, those chemicals that speak far louder than, and the habits? Even if we don't even talk about the food, the habit of the time of day that you eat, or your sedentary lifestyle, how do you get to the point of knowing what you are trusting? Whether that's actually you or all the stuff you've been used to doing.
Yeah, and I think, and for that woman,
Mm-hmm.
and even taken from my own experience, when I say trust, it may not be mean trusting in terms of you doing it by yourself. Trusting yourself enough to ask for help. Trusting yourself to know where you're weak. Trusting yourself to allow someone else in. Trusting yourself, period. However it needs to show up, however that word trust needs to show up, it has to be some trust. And I can even say for me, trusting, allowing you, Akilah S. Richards, to show up for me. Mm-hmm. That's trust. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean for me that I needed you to come in and say, all right, I'm gonna fly down to North Carolina and toss out your refrigerator. I don't need that.
Yeah.
But trusting to talk to you, right? And to allow you in so that you can be like, hold on. Wait, what you just say? like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I don't understand that. And allowing myself to trust that. And then in the same way that I can trust you, allow myself to trust me. To know that I can say, okay, this is what she said. This is what I know. This is who I am, where I am. What's the truth in all of that?
Yeah.
And then go that way. And it may show up as hybrid.
That's what I wanted to get out. That's what I want you guys to understand, right? So where you are and where you're looking to be oftentimes takes calling in the Calvary, whoever that is. So you need to have a resource or several resources. I love books and blogs personally. On my journey that I'm on now with my relationship with my body and food, books and blogs are really serving me, and Instagram, because, like all these people on here who, me too. Yes. So, finding those resources and not being afraid to reach out to somebody, not from a space of, oh my God, I need help, but just like, oh, how did you do this part? That's interesting. I never thought I would enjoy this particular thing. What do you think about that? Like, trying those different things. You gotta get out of stuck. Like, you know, and sometimes all you can do to get out of stuck is to just move about a bit. It doesn't mean that you make the radical changes. As you said, everybody's not doing a raw vegan diet. That's my way. That is serving me right now far more than words can express. But for you, it might just be communicating with other people in different spaces to say, let me see what they're doing and how that meshes with my truth. And maybe my truth can take some revising a little bit because I'm an adult and that's what I'm supposed to do, evolve.
Mm-hmm.
That.
Absolutely. I love allowing myself to go through this process of always finding the crystal clear truth that cannot be defended or they cannot be denied. Mm-hmm. And I'm learning from people that we all have different truths. We all have different fundamental truths, like undeniable truths.
Yep.
and then there's universal truths, right?
Yep.
And then there's our own personal ones. And I'm still exploring that, so I have no conclusion one way or the other from that. But I even noticed, like, with you when you talk about your raw vegan, and I'm like, yeah, I can see that one day for me. I don't feel like I'm there, and it's okay. But I appreciate following you on your fruitarian journey, because it's like I feel like we still continue to have conversations.
Yep.
I feel that, and I'm like, okay, all right, I got you, sis, thank you.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not gonna eat that,
Yep.
but I got you. I hear you.
Yeah.
You know, I hear you, and then I apply that to my fundamental truth
Yes.
of
To
saying,
see what
okay,
fits and what doesn't.
doesn't fit, yeah. But I think, and here's another thing, right? Being responsible for that woman who's watching this right now, it's a difference between your truth and then your excuse. And I know that
Well.
right, and that's sometimes it's not easy to discern. It's
Mm-hmm.
definitely not. So how do you discern when you keep making an excuse and when it's your truth? I can say from just my experience, as I keep asking myself questions, I never stop asking myself questions. And sometimes I get to a space where I won't move until I feel as though I've asked myself enough questions, and I'll allow myself to tell myself the truth,
Yeah.
even if I don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'll let someone else in, you know. Or maybe I won't. Sometimes I don't. Most of the times, honestly, for me, getting to my own truth, I can't talk to anyone else. Like, I don't.
Yeah, because it
Can't have
becomes
any.
other
Yeah.
noise. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just sit with it. And I
Yeah.
keep asking myself questions. I drill. Like, why? You know? And then it's just like, oh, that's why.
Yep. Yeah,
Then
that's
I can say that's
powerful.
excuse.
That
Yeah.
is powerful because then you can discern. And discernment is a skill. Like, it's not a talent, it's a skill. Like, write
Mm-hmm.
that down, okay?
Yeah.
Because it's something that you have to put into practice. Because for me, the same thing with questioning, and I have a very specific question. Most people who follow anything that I do or talk to me, because I just try to force feed it to anybody who will listen, is, but how do you want to feel? That's the question. But how do you want to feel? Because when I do that for myself, it came from my own personal journey, not any of my certifications or degrees or whatever. My own fear-laden fail and fail again journey. The only thing that brings me back to center, to my core self, is to say that, but Akilah, how do you want to feel? And if the thing that I'm choosing in that moment, or that I just chose a minute ago, because sometimes I don't get to ask the question right then because I'm human and I'm in it. I said, but how do you want to feel? If the thing that I'm doing isn't in alignment with how I want to feel, then my reason for doing it is an excuse. It's just that. That's how this whole journey came about. Because I'm like, well, but I want to be the person who's eating primarily plants. I want to do that. So why is that like a goal for like my 40th birthday or whenever, whatever thing comes up? Why? Why? But how do you want to feel? Well, I want to feel like my healthiest self. So even though I really loved Frosted Flakes, not but 2 weeks ago, and I couldn't even consider the idea of having like my dinner was this, a salad in this, and I want to show y'all like how big the bowl is, right? 2 weeks ago, I'd be like, I mean, I would just be laughing at the person. It's like, well, that's unfortunate that you didn't have a good source of protein that tastes good in your meal. You know what I'm saying? And 5 years before that, it might have been, well, if you don't sprinkle cheese on it, it's not going to taste good, or whatever the thing is. Because that's where I was.
I'm a cheesetarian.
But then for me, it's like, but how do you want to feel? Not a judgment on anybody, but knowing that it is proven that those things are not good for my body, particularly as a Black woman. So I can't afford to let what something tastes like be more important than how I want to feel as a God-centered, alive, and well-being. So then I have to do something different because I want to feel different. Right? And so
Yeah.
that is the thing. So it's exactly what you said, drilling down to asking yourself the why, the why, the why. And for me, asking myself, but how do you want to feel? And knowing that if I'm still choosing, well, I like Frosted Flakes, so tomorrow I'll exercise better. That doesn't feel good for me.
Right.
It stopped feeling good. So
Mm.
then you could do something else.
Mm. Hmm. And I wonder if women are afraid to feel good.
Mm,
Because what you just said makes perfect sense to me. It's logical. It's like, oh, okay, cool.
yeah,
Like my kids had pasta. I have vegetable pasta.
yeah,
I'm gonna swap it out and eat.
yeah,
But or I can eat that one because it's already cooked. But
yeah,
I don't. But I know how I deserve to feel,
yeah,
and I know I don't want that heavy feeling of pasta. I'd rather that light feeling of the vegetable
yep,
based one, the plant based one. I would
yep,
much rather that feeling.
yes.
Do we trust or are connected to the idea that we get to feel how we want to
And the
feel?
answer is no. We
Right.
know
Yeah.
that from our work. The answer
Yeah.
is no. And I mean our personal work as well as our
Yeah.
work as coaches. The answer is no, Katrina.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't connect with that. And this again, it is not about just the weight or the food. In all the other relationships that you have with yourself, whether it's your physical self or your spiritual self or whatever, how are you feeling in those spaces when you check in? And have you tapped into the idea that you deserve? And even if you don't feel yet, because deserve is a strong emotion, and that's another thing that might take some time for some of us. Even if you're not sure whether you deserve it, what do you want? Like, do you want to feel good? Do you want to feel like you're in a relationship where the person is like, oh my God, how did I get so lucky? Or you want to be in a relationship with your business where it's like, oh my God, there is an influx of monetary and spiritual compensation for this level of gift. Do you want to feel like that? And if what you're doing now doesn't feel like that, you are the primary part of that equation. So what can you start doing differently? And as Katrina said at the very beginning, what you are judging, whether it's the woman over there or the man over there or the woman in the mirror, why is it that you're making time to judge that? Why is that so easy for you and not so much about doing the work to get into a different space? That's a question you need to ask yourself. How can you get into a different space where you're moving away from judgment of self and other and moving into a place of embodiment of how you want to feel? We want to know how you intend to do that. If this conversation fed you in any way, don't keep it. Please share it, whether sharing how you got something from it with us or what you don't agree with us, or sharing it with other people. But the point of this is dialogue. Dialogue, because dialogue educates and it informs and it affects change. And we're alive in a time where sometimes dialogue is all we have. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we hope this fed you, and we want you to make time, if you can, after watching this, to dialogue with self and maybe even with your source. Dialogue and see where your truths are, and if there are some spaces in your life where you've allowed what other people think they know about you to affect how you feel about you, and start turning that around as vigilantly and as quickly as you can, because it is urgent. Okay? Thank you.